Muhammad, peace be upon his soul. The greatest of prophets, Islam was his only goal. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam balagha al-ula bikamalihi kashafa ad-duja bijamalihi hasunat jami'u khisalihi sallu alayhi wa alihi. Muhammad, peace be upon his soul. The greatest of prophets, Islam was his only goal. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Muhammad, peace be upon his soul. The greatest of prophets, Islam was his only goal. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Muhammad
sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kasiran kasira. And today we begin talking about the life of the Prophet, part 4. And what beautiful praise in the voice of Zain Bhika aapne suna. And this was for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And we start with the root. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. O Allah, exalt our Muhammad and the people of Muhammad, as you did exalt Abraham and the people of Abraham. O Allah, bless Muhammad and the people of Muhammad, as you did bless Abraham and the people of Abraham. Verily, you are praiseworthy and glorious. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي ربي زدني علما. O my Lord, open for me my chest and ease my task for me, and make loose the knot from my tongue, so that they understand my speech, and increase us all in knowledge. And we begin now with the life of the Prophet, जहाँ से हमने जी छोड़ी थी. और we left you off with the night of ascension. This was in the 12th year of the Prophethood. And शुरुआत वहीं से हम करते हैं जहाँ से हमने छोड़ी थी. लेकिन यहाँ पर कुछ शायद मुश्किल हो रही है, technical. Give me just a second and I will be right with you. तब तक आप दोबारा से थोड़ी सी नशीद सुनिए and I'll get back.
Him could have been al-Mujtaba. So perfect were his morals, so justly did he rule. Darkness had vanished and the world was full of nur. Muhammad, peace be upon his soul. The greatest of prophets, Islam was his only goal. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam balagha al-ula bikamalihi kashafa ad-duja bijamalihi hasunat jami'u khisalihi sallu alayhi wa alihi. Muhammad, peace be upon his soul. The greatest of prophets, Islam was his only goal. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Muhammad, peace be upon his soul. The greatest.
and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. और शुरू करते हैं हम जी आपको बताना about the 13th year of the Prophet's Prophethood life, and this was 622 CE, or 622 CE was the last year that he was in Mecca. उसके बारे में हम आपको बताना शुरू करते हैं, लेकिन यहाँ पर for some reason give me just one more second. And this chapter is named Help Arrives from Medina. We left off with telling you about the Meraj, Isra-ul-Meraj के बारे में हमने आपको बताया था. And then the following year, this is what happened. The 13th year saw a greater number of pilgrims from Yathrib, 73 men and 2 women. Secretly, Muhammad contacted the leaders of the group and they agreed to meet at Aqaba during the night on the 2nd day following the pilgrimage. The Muslims of Yathrib kept the meeting secret, stealing themselves away under the cover of the night. When they reached Aqaba, men and women ascended the mountain, awaiting the arrival of the Prophet. The Prophet arrived with his uncle Abbas, who had not yet converted to Islam. He knew from his nephew that this meeting was to conclude an alliance which might incite Quraysh to a war of aggression, as much as it was designed to achieve peace and security. Muhammad had informed his uncle that together with some members of Banu al-Muttalib and Banu Hashim, he had agreed with the new group from Yathrib that they would protect him personally. Anxious to strengthen his nephew and people against a war whose losses might fall heavily upon Banu Hashim and Banu al-Muttalib, Abbas sought to make sure that among this group from Yathrib he would find real helpers and allies. Consequently, he was the first one to open the discussion. He said, "O men from Khazraj, Muhammad's enemies and prestige among us are known to you. We have protected him even against those of his own people who think as highly of him as we do. Among us, he stands strong and secure, but he insists on joining your party. If you find yourselves capable of fulfilling toward him what you have promised, then you may proceed. But if you would betray him and send him over to his enemies once he has joined your party, you had better now say so and leave him alone." After hearing this speech of Abbas, the men from Yathrib said, "We have heard what you said, O Abbas," and turning to the Prophet, they continued, "O Prophet, speak out and choose for yourself and your Lord what you desire." Prophet Muhammad, after reciting some verses from the Quran, preached his faith in God in moving terms. He then said to the men from Yathrib, "I covenant with you on the condition that you will protect me against all, just as you would protect your women and children." Al-Bara said, "We have covenanted with you, O Prophet. By God, we are men of many wars. We are men of the sword, having inherited it from their father unto son." Before Al-Bara finished his words, Abu al-Haytham said, "O Prophet, there are pacts between us and some Jews which we are going to denounce. Should your cause succeed later or among your own tribe, would you return to them and leave us alone? Muhammad smiled and said, No, rather your blood is my blood and your destruction is my destruction. You are of me and I am of you. I shall fight whomsoever you fight and make peace with whomsoever you will make peace. The people were about to rise and give covenant to Muhammad when Abbas interrupted and said, O men of Khazraj, are you fully aware of what you are about to covenant with this man? You are about to covenant with him to make war against all sorts of men without discrimination. If you have any fear that should you lose your wealth and should your leaders fall by the sword, you might betray Muhammad, say so now and withdraw from this covenant. For if you do not and then betray your oath, you will have lost in this world as well as the next. But if you feel certain that you can stand by him and fulfill this oath, notwithstanding the loss of your property and the murder of your dear ones, then go ahead and covenant with him. He is by God the best gain in this world and the next. All the people present answered together, We take him despite all threats to property, wealth and life. Tell us, O Prophet, what will be our reward if we remain true to this oath? He answered, Jannah, paradise. They stretched out their hands to him and he to them, and the covenant was concluded. Thereafter the Prophet said, Elect among yourselves 12 representatives who will be responsible to me regarding your behavior and conduct. After they elected 9 from Al-Khazraj and 3 from Al-Aus, the Prophet addressed them in the following words. You are the guarantors of your people, just as the disciples were guarantors of theirs before Jesus, son of Mary. I, for my part, am the guarantor of my people. Such was their second covenant, which included the words, We have covenanted to listen and to obey in health and in sickness, in fortune and misfortune, to tell the truth wherever we might be, and at all times to fear none in the cause of God. So आपको पता है, this is the part where now they are threatened. Prophet Muhammad and his people are threatened in Mecca. तो उनको जो है अब हिजरत तक करनी पड़ी है, and they are actually talking to the people of Yathrib. This is the old name for Medina, and they are asking them कि अगर वो उनकी मदद कर सकते हैं या नहीं. And let's take a closer look and see what lessons and wisdom we can learn from these events that happened in the 13th year of the Prophethood, life of the Prophet in his Prophethood years. In this year, help came to the Prophet and his followers in Mecca from a people plagued with bitter conflict and civil war. They had just emerged from a savage conflict with a temporary agreement to stop fighting. The moderate amongst both sides called for a need to be united under one leader, someone who would unite them much like Qusay had united Quraysh in the past. This background of the people of Yathrib helped the recent converts, who had just returned from the pledging alliance to the Prophet. Allegiance, in paving their way from Mecca, immigration to Yathrib. The events that occurred during this year hold the following points of wisdom. There is an Abu Lahab amongst every generation of people who tries to undo the good work of others. He tries to erect barriers and ill feelings towards the callers of truth. The Prophet did not allow Abu Lahab and his ilk to prevent him from calling others, nor did he engage with much significance. Instead, he would arrange nocturnal appointments with chieftains to avoid interference. And this is how the first and second treaty of Al-Aqaba was conducted. And of course, as we know, that Abu Lahab was one of the Prophet's uncles. Lekin he was a bitter enemy of Islam. Generally, one should not assume that a particular person or group of people will reject the call to truth and thus not approach them. The Prophet would approach people from every background to accept Islam, and moreover, his morale was not weakened by their rejection. So see, this is a very good point. Prejudge nahi karna chahiye kisi ko bhi. When you are preaching the truth, और आप आप जाके उनको ज़रूर बताएं, कहें ज़रूर, और if they reject, well, at least you gave them the message. There were certain intrinsic characteristics within the people of Yathrib that made them more susceptible to accepting Islam. They had a sense of modesty, gentleness and humbleness, whereas the people of Mecca were quite arrogant and obstinate. In the second pledge of Al-Aqaba, the Prophet asked the 73 delegates from Yathrib to select from amongst themselves 12 representatives instead of choosing them himself, and by doing so was promoting the Islamic concept of mutual consultation. He also gauged from this the proportion of Khazrajites to Ausites, which was 3-1, and then appointed these chosen men as the head propagators of Islam in Medina. Nearly all those present at the second pledge were also present in the Battle of Badr, bearing testimony to their truthfulness to the covenant made. The pledge of Al-Aqaba was addressed by God in the Quran, chapter Al-Fath. Surely those who swear allegiance to you do not but swear allegiance to God. The hand of God is above their hands. Therefore, whoever breaks his faith, he breaks it only to the injury of his own soul, and whoever fulfills what he has covenanted with God, he will grant him a mighty reward. The last person to leave Mecca was Ali ibn Abi Talib, who, upon the instruction of the Prophet, took up the Prophet's cloak and lay in his bed to remain behind in Mecca, while the Prophet made his exit. He assured Ali that no harm would come to him and left the house reciting the following verse. Sorry, I had lost my page there for a second. ये Surah Yasin में है ये ayat, and this is the 9th ayat. रसूल सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ये पढ़ते हुए गए थे मदीना की तरफ. And this is to protect Ali and to tell him that he was protected by Allah. وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْ بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. And we have put before them a barrier and behind them a barrier and covered them so they do not see. So this was the last chapter in the Meccan period. और एक छोटी सी break लेके आते हैं आपके पास और इंशाल्लाह when we come back we're going to talk about the migration to Medina. और यहाँ पर आज कुछ खासी गड़बड़ हो रही है for some reason, तो दुआ कीजिए इंशाल्लाह that everything remains good and आपको हम ये पूरी स्टोरी अच्छे से सुना पाएं. और पूरी स्टोरी तो आज नहीं होगी लेकिन part 4 हम आज करेंगे. We're going to go into the life of the Prophet after Hijrah, and when we come back from the break, हम बताएंगे आपको how that migration happened. So stay tuned right here to Radio Azad, Voice of the People.
सुनिए जी, आते वक्त पेप्सी के 2 कार्टन लेते आइएगा क्रोगर से.
अच्छा.
और मिल्की वे की 4 डब्बे कॉस्को से होलसेल में सस्ते मिलेंगे.
अच्छा.
और शक्कर भी तो लानी है. देखिए 10 पाउंड का बैग लाइएगा सैम्स क्लब से.
अरे बेगम, मुझे करो बेगम. सुई से लेकर दवाई तक और डैलस से लेकर हवाई तक हर चीज मिलती है A to Z होलसेल. सो बी देसी एंड बाय देसी. A to Z Wholesale at your service in Waco and Dallas at Harry Hines. For more information, call 972-484-1153. And remember, be Desi, buy Desi.
मम्मी, मुझे जायरो खाना है.
कोई जरूरत नहीं है. हलाल जायरो कहीं नहीं मिलता.
मिलता है. चिली पेपर में सब हलाल ज़बीहा मिलता है. All kinds of sandwiches, pizzas, burgers, chicken wings और डैलस की बेस्ट बिरयानी आपके लिए.
लेकिन स्प्रिंग वैली और ग्रीनविल पर कौन जाएगा इतनी दूर?
अरे माँ, अर्विंग में मिकासर और वैली रंच पर भी एक ब्रांच है जिसके साथ मीट शॉप भी है. ऑर्गेनिक और नेचुरल मीट, चिकन, लैम, बीफ, गोट और स्टेक मीट के लिए.
ये अर्विंग में फोन नंबर क्या आएगा? 972-444-8866 और रिचर्डसन में 972-480-8998.
यार मेरी गाड़ी हर वक्त खराब हो जाती है. काम का मैकेनिक भी नहीं मिलता. जहाँ भी जाता हूँ इतने पैसे चार्ज करते हैं और कुछ अरसे में फिर खराब हो जाती है. That's because you're not taking your car to Lube Tech Complete Auto Care. वहाँ ना सिर्फ ऑयल चेंज करते हैं बल्कि व्हीकल इंस्पेक्शन और बैटरी चेक्स भी बिल्कुल मुफ्त. और अगर for any reason उनकी सर्विस के बाद गाड़ी खराब हो भी जाए तो just take advantage of their 12,000-mile nationwide warranty.
Located at 2547 Marsh Lane in Carrollton. For details, call 972-418-1490. That's 418-1490.
It's time to invite the Colonel home, offering you the very best catering services in Indian, Pakistani, Chinese and Mediterranean. Colonel Kebab's Factory, taking care of your pockets and palates.
थक गए होंगे आप भी वही पुराने रेस्टोरेंट से केटरिंग करवा के. अरे साहब, कोई और ऑप्शन भी तो होना चाहिए ना. एक ही जगह पे मिलेगा आपको चिकन चरगा, निहारी और बिहारी कबाब. वही आपको मिलेगा शवरमा, फलाफल और चिल्लो कबाब. बाकी भी हर चीज लाजवाब. ट्राई करके तो देखिए जनाब. कर्नल कबाब्स फैक्ट्री.
Order by tray or per head. Call 972-705-9595 or visit kebabsfactory.com. KABABZ factory.com.
अरे होम मिनिस्टर, तुम्हें हर रोज कहता हूँ इतनी गर्मी में एसी ऑन कर दिया करो.
और मैं भी तुम्हें कब से कह रही हूँ कुछ खराब है एसी में.
स्टोर में एक वाटर कूलर भी खराब है. परेशान हूँ यार, करूँ तो करूँ क्या?
Don't worry, Dad. Just call Mohammed Bhatti of Air Dog. I heard his commercial on the radio today. It said they do all kinds of commercial and residential AC repairs and installations. They also service walk-in coolers and ice machines, and will also help set up energy-saving water heaters. And Dad, he will give you a 20% discount on any written estimate.
हाँ होम मिनिस्टर, तुम भी रेडियो सुना करो, कुछ अच्छा ही सीखोगी.
For all your commercial and residential repair needs, call AirDoc at 817-808-7323.
Bismillah International Grocery, one stop for grocery and Zabiha halal meat, conveniently located at the intersection of Shiloh Road and 14th Street in Plano. Call 972-578-0260, 972-578-0260.
If you would like to deal with honest individuals and thorough professionals, Radio Azad is where you need to advertise. We have some great advertising packages for you, and we will customize to your business. For more information, please visit us at radioazad.us or call us at 469-358-2321. Trust Radio Azad, because your growth means our success.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, listening to Radio Azad, Voice of the People, with your मेज़बान रूज सईद, और रहेंगे आपके साथ सुबह 10 बजे तक. इससे पहले कि हम अपनी कंटिन्यू करें स्टोरी इन आवर प्रोग्राम उड़न खटोला, आपको हम बता दें अबाउट द प्रोग्रामिंग लाइनअप टुडे. आज होती है जी हमारी फ्राइडे मॉर्निंग मस्ती आफ्टर 10 o'clock. हमारे शो के बाद बीना और आयशा आती हैं यहाँ पर विद कॉफ़ी मॉर्निंग्स. उसके बाद जी करते हैं आपके साथ एक सुहाने सफ़र में सफ़र रमेश जी फ्रॉम 12 to 2. उसके बाद दिलशाद का शो होता है फ्रॉम 2 to 3 टुडे. 3 to 4 सम फरमाइशी गाने, और उसके बाद फिर 4 से 6 बोल क्लब आज़ाद हैं तेरे विद आज़ाद. 6 to 8 आज निशा करेंगी जी यहाँ पर जस्ट चिल. एंड देन फिर फ्राइडे के दिन 8 से 10 बजे होता है हमारा नेपाली प्रोग्राम हमरो आवाज. और फिर इस प्रोग्राम की रिपीट आप सुन सकते हैं रात 10 बजे अकॉर्डिंग टू सेंट्रल स्टैंडर्ड टाइम. वीकेंड की हमारी प्रोग्रामिंग होती है जी शुरू विद अमेरिकन देसी म्यूजिक एंड टॉक रैल्फ रमजा के साथ 11 to 12 ऑन सैटरडेज. 12 to 1 एवरी अदर वीक होती हैं यहाँ पर TMWF आवर के साथ मोना कफील जी एंड समटाइम्स अनदर होस्ट एंड अ गेस्ट इन फैमिली फोकस. 1 से 3 बजे मराठी प्रोग्राम विद स्वाति. 3 से 5 सितार और गिटार अल्टरनेटिव म्यूजिक विद श्री. 5 to 7 किताबों में लिखा है विद नंदिता एंड रमेश जी. उसके बाद आप सुनते हैं रिपीट ब्रॉडकास्ट. एंड देन संडे को गुफ्तगू निखत के साथ यहाँ पर जी होंगे कुछ बहुत ही ज़बरदस्त हस्तियाँ. 10 to 12 करती हैं आपके साथ इजी ब्रीजी मीठी मीठी गुफ्तगू. एंड दिस टाइम शी इज़ गोइंग टू हैव सम पीपल फ्रॉम SMU. एंड सुनना मत भूलिएगा, बहुत ही ज़बरदस्त टॉपिक लेके आएंगे और बहुत ही अच्छी यहाँ पर डिस्कशन होगी. एंड प्लीज़ डू गिव अ कॉल एंड एक्सप्रेस योर ओपिनियन एंड आस्क एनी क्वेश्चंस इफ यू हैव एनी. देन दिस इज गोइंग टू बी संडे 10 to 12. 12 से 2 बजे दिल दिल पाकिस्तान विद अनवर खान साहब. 2 से 4 दिल के रिश्ते विद श्वेता. 4 से 5 द हेल्थ आवर विद डॉक्टर विजय शर्मा. एंड देन 5 से 7 बजे गुजराती प्रोग्राम हमारी संगीता जी के साथ. एंड दैट इज द प्रोग्रामिंग लाइनअप फॉर द वीकेंड फॉर यू. हमारे क्लाइंट ऑफ द वीक हैं जी A to Z होलसेल, और बहुत ही ज़बरदस्त इनकी जो है वो ग्रोसरी आइटम्स हैं जी. होलसेलर्स हैं तो सप्लाई ये मोस्टली करते हैं टू कन्वीनियंस स्टोर्स एंड गैस स्टेशंस. अगर आप कोई बिजनेस हो and you would like to buy in bulk, so this is the place for you. लेकिन अगर आप एक इंडिविजुअल भी हों तो भी आप जा सकते हैं. there's just a minimum that you have to actually वहाँ पर आपको जाके करना पड़ेगा. मिनिमम परचेस होती है और आप कर सकते हैं वहाँ पर हर चीज़ आपको जो कि आप इमेजिन कर सकते हैं इन ग्रोसरी आइटम्स और एवरी ड्रिंक दैट यू कैन इमेजिन, स्पेशली अगर आप इंडिविजुअल हों और आपके घर में कोई जी बड़ी सी पार्टी हो रही हो, तो यहाँ के में ड्रिंक्स आप ज़रूर जाके यहीं से लीजिएगा. वेरी वेरी रीजनेबली प्राइस्ड, ऑफ कोर्स होलसेलर्स हैं. और उसके अलावा आपको जी ड्राई ग्रोसरीज भी मिल जाएंगी, कैंडी, चॉकलेट, बहुत सारी और चीज़ें. दे हैव अबाउट 8,000 डिफरेंट आइटम्स. लोकेशन है इनकी इन 11100 हैरी हाइंस बुलेवार्ड एंड द क्लोजेस्ट इंटरसेक्शन इज हैरी हाइंस इन रॉयल. दूसरी लोकेशन इनकी वेको में है. और बरकत अली साहब से ज़रूर हेलो कीजिएगा वहाँ पर, और इंशाल्लाह उनको भी हम एक्चुअली विल इनवाइट हिम वन ऑफ दीज डेज टू कॉल इन एंड से समथिंग अबाउट. आपको पता है ही इज़ द प्रेजिडेंट of the Pakistan Society of North Texas. Vice President थे and now he is माशाल्लाह the President. और उनका भी एक एक्चुअली आने वाला है जी अप्रैल में 23 मार्च का जो जलसा होगा उसकी सेलिब्रेशन होगी इन अप्रैल. सो इंशाल्लाह वी आर गोइंग टू टॉक अबाउट दैट टू. बरकत साहब इंशाल्लाह उनको बहुत जल्दी इनवाइट करेंगे. चलें जी, और अब शुरू करते हैं दोबारा से हम अपनी स्टोरी. एंड नाउ वी गो इनटू द फर्स्ट ईयर दैट द प्रॉफिट वेंट टू मदीना. दिस इज इट्स अ वेरी वेरी सिग्निफिकेंट ईयर फॉर अ लॉट ऑफ रीजंस. पहले तो आपको पता है द माइग्रेशन ऑफ द प्रॉफिट टू मदीना. दिस सिग्निफाइज द चेंज ऑफ द कैलेंडर जो कि हम फॉलो करते हैं इस्लामिक कैलेंडर. दिस एक्चुअली बिगैन फ्रॉम दिस ईयर और ये पहला साल है हिजरी का. एंड इट्स कॉल्ड AH आफ्टर हिजरा, जो कि प्रेजेंटली अब चल रहा है 1433. 1433 इज द ईयर. And then CE of course continues, जो कि उस वक्त 622 CE था. CE of course is still followed by everyone. The year जो कि Gregorian calendar के according है वो still everybody follows, and according to that of course we are in year 2012. इस्लामिक कैलेंडर के अपने महीने होते हैं जी, और आपको हम बता दें कि आज रबी अल-थानी की 2 तारीख है. And I was just thinking yesterday, subhanallah, रबी अल-थानी के बाद आता है जी जमादी अल-अव्वल, फिर जमादी अल-थानी, और उसके बाद रजब, शाबान और रमज़ान. तो जी आ गया रमज़ान भी तकरीबन जुलाई में होगा जी. मेरे ख्याल से 19th या 20th को पड़ेगा. It's almost here. और अल्लाह ताला हमको खैरियत से पहुँचाए, रमज़ान नसीब करे, ये रमज़ान भी नसीब करे इंशाल्लाह या रब. The important events and incidents that took place in this year, which was the first year of Hijrah. After the Hajj pilgrimage, the new converts from Yathrib returned home to await the arrival of the Muslim fugitives. In Mecca, Muhammad began to persuade the believers to migrate, but stopped short of commanding it. It was an irrevocable and frightening step, and anybody who felt it to be beyond his or her strength was free to remain behind. During the summer in 622 CE, about 70 Muslims set off with their families to Medina, where they were lodged in the houses of the Ansar, the Muslims of Medina, until they could set up their own homes. And this is actually the year जबकि यद्रिब का नाम जो है वो मदीना पड़ा. And later on in the story, it will tell you that this is Medina. Medina का मतलब होता है जी city. and that is short for Madina to Nabi, which means the city of the Prophet. When Quraysh realized the plan, they sought to prevent certain individuals from leaving, though they fell short of a concerted effort to detain the Muslims. They saw the departure of Muhammad as a serious threat, fearing that under his wise and far-sighted leadership, the people of Yathrib might even seek to attack Mecca, or at least cut off their trade route to Sham. And just little points here, Sham का जो area है, this is the greater Syria का जो area है, Syria भी कहते हैं Arabic में, and this is Lebanon का area, अभी जो present Lebanon है, Jordan है, Palestine है, that area is called the area of Sham. Hence the Quraysh decided that there was really no alternative but rid of themselves of this nuisance once and for all. They concluded at the Nadwa meeting house that the best solution would be for each one of their clans to delegate a strong youth and arm him with a sharp sword so that they would all kill Muhammad together with one stroke. Therefore, the responsibility for his death would be equally divided amongst them all, thus making vengeance on the part of Banu Abd Manaf, the clan of the Prophet, virtually impossible. When the iniquitous resolution had been passed, the angel Gabriel came to Muhammad and revealed to him their plot. He then gave him God's permission to leave Mecca, bidding him to leave that night and not sleep in his bed. At noon, the Prophet went to inform his companion Abu Bakr, who at once knew that the time had come to leave Mecca. His daughter Aisha saw the delight in her father's eyes at the prospect of accompanying the Prophet as they sat and made their plans. The Prophet then returned to his house and told Ali that he was about to leave for Yathrib and that he should stay behind in Mecca in order to give back all the goods which had been entrusted to the Prophet. As night advanced, the Quraysh posted assassins around the Prophet's house. Thus they kept vigil all night long, waiting to kill him the moment he left his house early in the morning. The Prophet and Ali were soon aware of their presence, and the Prophet took up a cloak in which he used to sleep and gave it to Ali, telling him to sleep in it and that no harm would come to him. Just before dawn, Muhammad left without being noticed. He cast a handful of dust at the assassins and managed to work his way through them, reciting verses of the Noble Quran. And we have put a barrier before them and a barrier behind them, and we have covered them up so that they cannot see. Then together along with Abu Bakr, they left for Medina, southward towards the cave of Thawr. For 3 long days, the pair remained in the cave, and the Quraysh persistently looked for them without avail. Nobody knew of their hiding place in the cave except the family of Abu Bakr. On the 3rd day, the silence of their mountain sanctuary was broken by the faint sound of men's voices gradually drawing closer. As they approached their hideout, the Prophet looked at Abu Bakr and said, "Do not fear, God is with us." They could now hear the sound of footsteps which drew nearer and then stopped. The assassins were standing outside the cave. They then turned back, all in agreement that there was no need to enter the cave, since no one could possibly be there. To their amazement, the two climbed up to the mouth of the cave to find its entrance covered with a spider's web. When they felt certain that Quraysh had called off the hunt for them in the vicinity, Muhammad and Abu Bakr commanded their servant to bring them their camels for a final escape. Together with their servant and guide, they headed south towards Medina, taking unknown paths to cover their tracks. Meanwhile, Quraysh declared 100 camels as a reward for whoever would bring back Muhammad, dead or alive. Such an immense sum spurred many individuals to try their luck. From amongst them was Suraqa ibn Malik. Upon hearing that the Prophet had been spotted, he decided to pursue him, secretly mounting a swift horse and riding northwest. As he caught sight of them, his horse began to stumble and continued to do so a number of times. He conceded that this was indeed a bad omen. However, with the price in mind, he obstinately continued. Now so close that he could hear the Prophet reciting verses of the Quran, the two forelegs of his horse began to sink into the sand, causing Suraqa to fall off. Awakened to the situation, he realized his inability in the face of divine protection. He approached the traveling group with a penitent heart and begged of the Prophet for forgiveness in all humility. The Prophet forgave him and asked him to keep their matter a secret. Suraqa hurried back to Mecca, a Muslim, and tried to foil the attempts of those who were in pursuit of Muhammad. For 7 consecutive days, they traveled with great haste under the cover of night until they reached the quarters of Banu Sabin, close to Medina. Their fears lessened, and for the first time, their hearts delighted with the hope and assurance of victory. They had almost reached their destination. During Prophet Muhammad's long and exhaustive trip, the news reached his companions in Yathrib that he had emigrated from Mecca in order to join them. Aware of the enmity of Quraysh and of their attempts to follow and seize the Prophet, the Muslims waited anxiously for his arrival, and although they had heard a great deal about his message and resolution, for many days before his arrival, they would go out to the outskirts of the city at dawn to spend the morning seeking signs of the Prophet's arrival at a place called Al-Harra. Abu Bakr and Muhammad had now reached the town of Aqaba, on the outskirts of Medina, where they stayed for a few days. During this interval, he founded a mosque, and before he left for Medina, Ali had joined his party. On Monday, 27th September 622 CE, as the Muslims awaited the arrival of Muhammad, a Jew of Yathrib announced to them, "O people of Arabia, your man has finally arrived." And I'd like to actually play this one song for you at this point. ये अंसार की जो छोटी बच्चियां थी, अंसार are the people of Medina, वो कहलाते हैं अंसार because अंसार means the helpers. And अंसार की जो छोटी छोटी बच्चियां थी, they climbed up on the tree, not on the tree, on the mountain tops, and awaited the Prophet's arrival. And when they finally saw him coming, वो उन्होंने ये गाना गाया था. दिस इज़ अ वेरी वेरी फेमस सॉन्ग, और इसके साथ इंग्लिश के इसके मतलब भी हैं, वो आपको हम सुनाते हैं. एंड आई वांट यू टू इमेजिन द सीन कि आपके शहर, आपके घर रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम आए हैं. आप सोचें ये क्या समा होगा इस वक्त, and you know what the people of Medina must be feeling at this moment, and it is just so overwhelming just to think about it कि रसूल अल्लाह जो है वो आपके शहर आपके घर आए हैं, तो आप क्या करेंगे, आप कहाँ बिठाएंगे उनको, क्या खिलाएंगे. सुभान अल्लाह, what a great feeling, and this is a beautiful beautiful song, and ये है बच्चियों की आवाज़ में, and this is also in the voice of Yusuf Islam. So the Prophet has arrived in Medina. A joyous cry swept Medina as the news soon spread through the city, and people left their homes wearing their best attire to receive their noble guest. Yadrib would now be known as Medina, which is a shortening of Madinatun Nabi, or the city of the Prophet. A number of notables invited the Prophet to stay with them, but the Prophet respectfully declined, and for fairness allowed his camel to stroll freely through the city. It continued until it stopped at an enclosure belonging to 2 orphans of Banu al-Najjar, which he bought from them. There the Prophet's mosque was built in earnest, along with his living quarters. The immigrants and residents built the mosque from the trunk of palm trees that were used as pillars to support a roof of palm branches, and a greater part of the courtyard was left open. but the immigrants and the helpers, as the residents of Medina would now be known. Indeed, needed a more formal bond than simply a song and a shared activity. The Prophet enjoined upon the two parties a tie of brotherhood, pairing each of them into a bond that would supersede past tribal ties. The Quraysh, the Madani tribes of Aus and Khazraj, now formed one ummah. Islam was building a force for unity and seeking to eradicate all divisions. So now the distinction, now we know कि जो कि हिजरत करके आए थे वो थे जी मुहाजिर कहलाते हैं, और जो मदीना के जो लोकल्स हैं वो हैं अंसार. And this is what they are going to be referred as in the story further on. After the second pledge of Aqaba, where the people of Yathrib swore an oath of allegiance for the duties of war, the Prophet began to encourage his followers in Mecca to immigrate to Yathrib. The Muslims of Quraysh began to immigrate in considerable numbers, and it was not long before all his closest companions had left Mecca, except Abu Bakr and Ali. The Qurayshites did what they could to stop the immigrations and succeeded in preventing a few who they managed to coerce into denouncing Islam. God revealed then to them that the door of repentance was still open, and so when news reached them of this, they renewed their Islam and waited for their opportunity to escape. The following lessons can be drawn from this episode of the biography. The first migration to Abyssinia, which occurred 9 years ago, was a practical form of training the disciples. They learned firsthand the hardship of having to leave behind their homeland. Though the pledge of protection was secured by the Prophet, he chose not to migrate in haste, but rather wait for divine instructions. One of the wisdoms behind the delay was to allow the appointed preachers in Medina time to gather momentum and spread the message amongst its people, such that a great many of them would long for the Prophet's arrival. The Prophet utilized every means at his disposal to avoid being detected and to make his migration a success. But he never once feared for his well-being. Such action is part and parcel of having true reliance on God, as his help and aid is for those who strive by taking the means, but then place their trust upon him for the desired outcome. So दवा और दुआ दोनों करने की जरूरत है. You strive in the way of Allah and then pray for the results. When there is no recourse to a means, that then reliance upon God is still required. This is like the time when Abraham was thrown into a fire and God caused the fire to become cool for him. The migration to Medina was perhaps the most significant occurrence in the history of mankind. In later years, the Muslims would conquer a multitude of lands, but it would all begin with Medina. This year was thus chosen to demarcate the beginning of the Islamic calendar. The arrival of the Prophet signified the end of one phase of his call and the beginning of an entirely new phase. The focus of his call would now be to establish a flourishing community of principled believers who would uphold the Islamic teachings and propagate them to the rest of the world. Upon reaching Medina, the Prophet enjoined bonds of brotherhood among the immigrants with the helpers, the new converts of Medina, and thus unified them. The unity of the Ummah, Muslim nation, was to reflect the divine unity, which Muslims were also commanded to build in their own personal lives. The Prophet spoke of a dream in which the migration to Yathrib was foretold to him. He said to his wife Aisha, "I have been shown the land to which you will migrate. It has palm trees between the two lava fields, the two stony tracts." The dreams of the Prophet are part of revelation from God. The Quranic chapter Al-Ankabut is generally recognized as being one of the last chapters to be revealed during the Meccan periods. We find that the Muslims were instructed to preach and debate with the people of the book with wisdom and good manners, as they were now their neighbors in Medina. Only argue with the people of the book in the kindest way, except in the case of those of them who do wrong, saying, "We have faith in what has been sent down to us and what was sent down to you. Our God and your God are one, and we submit to him." Despite all the worldly means that the Prophet and Abu Bakr took to ensure their migration was kept as secret as possible, they in no way depended or relied upon the ability of their own efforts. On the contrary, their hearts were firmly reliant upon God, hoping for his help and support. Muhammad and Abu Bakr received reassurance from the heavens when they feared the Quraysh were about to spot them hiding in the cave of Thawr. The following Quranic verse from the chapter At-Tawbah speaks of a divine help and support that came to their aid. When these two were hiding in the cave, and the apostle said to his companion, "Grieve not, verily God is with us." And thereupon God bestowed upon him from on high his gift of inner peace, and brought utterly low the cause of those who were bent on denying the truth, whereas the cause of God remained supreme. For God is almighty wise. God also revealed to the Prophet at this time, the verse 80 from the chapter of Al-Isra. "Say, my Lord, make my entry into Medina sincere, and make my leaving Mecca sincere, and grant me from thy presence an authority to aid me." Another very significant thing that happened this year is reported that the regular prayers of Zohar, Asr and Isha were changed from being units of 2 to units of 4. Wallahu alam, and Allah knows best. Acha ji, and before we go on and tell you about the Battle of Badr, which happened in the second year of Hijrah to Medina, we are going to take a very, very short commercial break. So stay with us right here on Radio Azad.
Radio Azad. It's my radio.
Mera radio.
मेरा भी तो है.
सोना हीरे मोती से वर सुंदरता के सारे सपने देखे सोचे थे जो हमने पूरे हुए हैं लम्हों में.
Malani Jewelers ज्वेलर्स, 22 कैरेट सोना, डायमंड्स, जेमस्टोन्स ज्वेलरी आपकी खिदमत में।
318 South Central Expressway, Richardson, Texas. For details, call 972-234-4653 or visit www.malanijewelers.com.
अरे होम मिनिस्टर, तुम्हें हर रोज कहता हूँ इतनी गर्मी में एसी ऑन कर दिया करो।
और मैं भी तुम्हें कब से कह रही हूँ कुछ खराब है एसी में।
स्टोर में एक वाटर कूलर भी खराब है। परेशान हूँ यार, करूँ तो करूँ क्या?
Don't worry, Dad. Just call Mohammed Bhatti of Air Dog. I heard his commercial on the radio today. It said they do all kinds of commercial and residential AC repairs and installations. They also service walk-in coolers and ice machines, and will also help set up energy-saving water heaters. And Dad, he will give you a 20% discount on any written estimate.
हाँ होम मिनिस्टर, तुम भी रेडियो सुना करो, कुछ अच्छा ही सीखोगी।
For all your commercial and residential repair needs, call AirDoc at 817-808-7323.
मम्मी, मुझे जायरो खाना है।
कोई जरूरत नहीं है, हलाल जायरो कहीं नहीं मिलता।
मिलता है, चिली पेपर में सब हलाल ज़बीहा मिलता है। All kinds of sandwiches, pizzas, burgers, chicken wings और डैलस की बेस्ट बिरयानी आपके लिए।
लेकिन स्प्रिंग वैली और ग्रीनविल पर कौन जाएगा इतनी दूर?
अरे माँ, अर्विंग में मिकासर और वैली रंच पर भी एक ब्रांच है जिसके साथ मीट शॉप भी है, ऑर्गेनिक और नेचुरल मीट, चिकन, लैम, बीफ, गोट और स्टेक मीट के लिए।
तो ये अर्विंग में फोन नंबर क्या आएगा?
972-444-8866 और रिचर्डसन में 972-480-8998। सुनिए जी, आते वक्त पेप्सी की 2 कार्टन लेते आइएगा क्रोगर से।
अच्छा।
और मिल्की वे की 4 डब्बे कॉस्को से होलसेल में सस्ते मिलेंगे।
अच्छा।
और शक्कर भी तो लानी है, देखिए 10 पाउंड का बैग लाइएगा सैम्स क्लब से।
अरे बेगम, मुझे करो बेगम, सुई से लेकर दवाई तक और डैलस से लेकर हवाई तक हर चीज मिलती है A to Z होलसेल। सो बी देसी एंड बाय देसी। A to Z Wholesale at your service in Waco and Dallas at Harry Hines. For more information, call 972-484-1153. And remember, be Desi, buy Desi.
यार मेरी गाड़ी हर वक्त खराब हो जाती है, काम का मैकेनिक भी नहीं मिलता, जहाँ भी जाता हूँ इतने पैसे चार्ज करते हैं और कुछ अरसे में फिर खराब हो जाती है। That's because you're not taking your car to Lube Tech Complete Auto Care. वहाँ ना सिर्फ ऑयल चेंज करते हैं बल्कि व्हीकल इंस्पेक्शन और बैटरी चेक्स भी बिल्कुल मुफ्त। और अगर for any reason उनकी सर्विस के बाद गाड़ी खराब हो भी जाए तो just take advantage of their 12,000-mile nationwide warranty.
Located at 2547 Marsh Lane in Carrollton. For details, call 972-418-1490. That's 418-1490.
It's time to invite the Colonel home, offering you the very best catering services in Indian, Pakistani, Chinese and Mediterranean. Colonel Kebab's Factory, taking care of your pockets and palates.
थक गए होंगे आप भी वही पुराने रेस्टोरेंट से केटरिंग करवा के। अरे साहब, कोई और ऑप्शन भी तो होना चाहिए ना। एक ही जगह पे मिलेगा आपको चिकन चरगा, निहारी और बिहारी कबाब, वही आपको मिलेगा शवरमा, फलाफल और चिल्लो कबाब, बाकी भी हर चीज लाजवाब। ट्राई करके तो देखिए जनाब। कर्नल कबाब्स फैक्ट्री।
Order by tray or per head. Call 972-705-9595 or visit kebabsfactory.com. KABABZ factory.com.
सितारों से आगे जहां और भी हैं, अभी इश्क के इम्तिहां और भी हैं। अगर खो गया एक नशेमन तो क्या गम, मकामाते आहो फुगां और भी हैं। तू शाही है परवाज है काम तेरा, तेरे सामने आसमां और भी हैं। इसी रोज शब में उलझ कर न रह जा कि तेरे जमानो मकाम और भी हैं। तलअल बदरु अलैना मिन सनियातिल वदाई वजबश शुक्रू अलैना मा दआ लिल्लाहि दाई। तलअल बदरु अलैना मिन सनियातिल वदाई वजबश शुक्रू अलैना मा दआ लिल्लाहि दाई।
सा बदला है समा, कांटे भी अब फूल हैं। आप क्या पहुँचे मदीना, आई है अब जामे जां। तलअल बदरु अलैना मिन सनियातिल वदाई, वजबश शुक्रु अलैना मा दआ लिल्लाहि दाई।
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, listening to Radio Azad, the voice of the people, with your मेज़बान अरूज सईद। और प्रोग्राम उड़न खटोले में आज कंटिन्यू कर रहे हैं हम of the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and this is the Medina period, or this is the second year of the migration of the Prophet. लेकिन बताने से पहले आपको कहानी सुनाने से पहले आपको हम बताते हैं about Texas Muslim Women's Foundation Tiles for a Cause. They are actually offering us a unique opportunity to help out with their shelter. और यहाँ पर आप एक टाइल खरीद सकते हैं जी, एक unique colored glass tile. These will be put on a special wall in the women's shelter. $100 का एक टाइल होगा और इसके ऊपर आप नाम एनग्रेव करवा सकते हैं of someone special in your life to honor them. And ये आप के लिए लग जाएगा in the women's shelter on a special wall. ये इन्फॉर्मेशन लेने के लिए आप कॉल कर सकते हैं 469-467-6241 469-467-6241, or you can email tmwf@tmwf.org. A very beautiful way of helping out with the women's shelter. Texas Muslim Women's Foundation का hour सुनना मत भूलिएगा. It's going to be this Saturday from 12 to 1. Family focus. चलिए जी, let's get started with this chapter. और ये खासा लंबा चैप्टर है, ये चैप्टर ही ख़त्म हो पाएगा आज, और फिर उसके बाद इंशाल्लाह we'll continue this in the next part. So we'll be able to tell you about just one battle today, and this is the Battle of Badr, जिसमें कि अल्लाह ताला ने अपने फरिश्तों की फ़ौज भेजी थी अपने रसूल की मदद के लिए. As soon as the Muslims undertook the hijrah, they knew that they would have to be prepared to fight. As mentioned early on, the ghazu or raid was an accepted way of making ends meet among the Arabs when times were hard. और गज़ू का मतलब होता है raid, and this is it's not an actual full-fledged battle, it's just a small raid. Raiders would invade the territory of an enemy tribe and capture their livestock and other goods, taking care of to avoid bloodshed. Medina was ideally placed to attack the Meccan caravans, often guarded by only a few merchants. Muhammad dispatched 2 raiding parties of immigrants to attack their caravans because the Quraysh had usurped the wealth they left behind when fleeing Mecca. These early raids were not entirely successful, but sent a clear message to the Meccans of defiance. The raids didn't deter Abu Sufyan, who led a great caravan towards Sham. The goods were estimated at 50,000 dinars, with all the Meccan merchants having bought a share in it. The Muslims received the news of the caravan, and the Prophet set out with 300 odd men to intercept it at the well of Badr, near the Red Sea coast. Abu Sufyan caught wind of the ambush, and instead of taking his usual route across the Hijaz, he turned sharply away from the coast and dispatched a local tribesman to Mecca to get help. And the area of Hijaz is just west of the present-day Saudi Arabia. The change of plan proved successful as he managed to elude the Muslims and take the caravan beyond their reach. He sent word that the merchandise was safe and that military help was no longer needed. But Abu Jahl would have none of this. "By God," he cried, "we will not go back until we have been to Badr. We will spend 3 days there, slaughter camels, and feast and drink wine. The Arabs will hear that we have come and will respect us in the future." But not even Abu Jahl was expecting a full-fledged battle. When news reached the Muslims that the Quraysh had come out in force, the Prophet called a council of war as the Muslim volunteers had come out to take part in a ghazu, not a pitched battle. And let me go ahead and make a distinction here. Ghazwa, जो कि आप सुनेंगे later on, Ghazwa is a battle, और Ghazwa वो battles कहलाते हैं जो कि जिसमें रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने खुद शिरकत की थी. After Abu Bakr and Umar presented their views, Miqdad ibn Amr stood up and said, "O Prophet of God, press forward toward that which God has shown you. We are with you. By God, we shall never say to you, as the Jews had said to Moses, 'Go alone with your Lord and fight with him for us, while we remain here and await your return.' Rather, we say, 'Go forth, you and your Lord to fight, for we fight with you.'" Al-Miqdad's speech on behalf of the immigrants was followed by silence. The Prophet said, "Speak out, O men, and give me your counsel." He was specially anxious to hear the Ansar's view, who on the day of Aqaba pledged to protect him as they would their children and women, but not to permit any aggression with him outside their own area. When the Ansar realized that he was waiting for them to speak, Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, their leader, rose and addressed the Prophet. "Does it seem, O Prophet of God, that you are seeking to hear our view?" The Prophet answered, "Indeed." Sa'd said, "We have believed in you, and we have witnessed that what you have brought to us is the truth. We have covenanted with you to hear and to obey. Go ahead with whatever you decide, for we are with you. By him who sent us as a prophet, by him who sent you as a prophet, if you were to ask us to cross the sea and you plunged into it, we would plunge into it with you, and not a man would stay behind. We do not fear that you cause us to face our enemy tomorrow. We shall hold fast to our ground and stand firm or press forward toward the enemy in solid ranks. We hope that God will show you such of our deeds as you may not be disappointed therein, but may be proud of. Lead us forth with God's blessing." Sa'd had hardly finished when the Prophet's face radiated with joy, saying, "Proceed and be hopeful, for God had promised me one of the two, either the caravan or the Meccan army." Ali al-Zubair and Sa'd were dispatched with a number of other companions to the well of Badr to seek out fresh news. The group returned with 2 water carriers who revealed that Quraysh's army stood behind the hill on the further side and that the leaders of Quraysh were all present. The next day, news reached them that the caravan had in fact passed them by on a different route and that Quraysh's army was still in the vicinity close by. With this news, whatever hope for booty some of them may have entertained collapsed. The Prophet discussed with his companions whether or not they should now return to Medina and not force a showdown with Quraysh's army. In connection with this, the following verses of the Quran were revealed. And remember, when God promised you one of the two parties of the enemy, that is either the army or the caravan, that it should be yours. You wished that the one not armed, the caravan, should be yours. But God willed to justify the truth by His words and to cut off the roots of the disbelievers. So this was a command that was in the Quran. और इसका क्या wisdom थी वो भी हम थोड़ा सा आपको पढ़ के बताएंगे. Quraysh asked themselves the same question. However, Abu Jahl insisted that the fight should go ahead so that Muhammad can be rooted and destroyed. There was some hesitation in the camp of Quraysh, with one tribe returning to Mecca, but the rest followed Abu Jahl and set up camp behind a sand dune. The Muslims hurried to the springs of Badr. When they reached the first water well, Muhammad dismounted with the intention of camping there. Recognizing the area, Al-Hubab ibn al-Mundhir approached the Prophet and suggested that the Muslims reach the well closest to the enemy. There they would bring a trough to it to fill with water and then fill the well with sand. Thus, in the engagement, the Muslims would fight the enemy, having possession of all of the water. The Prophet immediately agreed and rose to go forward with his force. On realizing that the Muslims were moving into position, Quraysh arranged and readied themselves for battle. A shower of rain hardened the ground and made it easier for the Muslims to move, but more difficult for Meccans, who had to toil uphill. Some of the men of Quraysh, although acknowledging that the Muslims numbered a mere 300, feared for the heads of Quraysh as they had all joined the battle. Utbah bin Rabi' advised his peers to return to their homes and leave Muhammad alone amongst the tribes. But when Abu Jahl heard these words of Utbah, he raged in anger, inciting Quraysh to drive towards the Muslims. As always in Arabia, the Battle of Badr began with single combats. Al-Aswad sprang out of the ranks of Quraysh toward the Muslims, seeking to destroy the trough and drink from the well of Badr, but Hamza stood ready, striking him with his sword, cutting off his legs and killing him. As soon as Al-Aswad fell, other members of Quraysh sprang forth, challenging the Muslims to duel, wanting to fight their own tribesmen. At this, Hamza, Ali and Ubaidah ibn al-Harith advanced forth and slew their opponents. No sooner had they charged were all three men of Quraysh lying dead on the ground. Ubaidah received a lethal blow to his leg, severing it. As the marrow oozed from its stump, he had only one thought: "Am I not a martyr, O Messenger of God?" He said as the Prophet came to his aid, "Indeed you are," he answered. When the Qurayshite army saw this, they advanced, and the two armies collided. The Prophet prayed to his Lord ceaselessly and persistently to come to their help, and when the engagement grew fierce, he again began to supplicate his Lord, "O God, should this group of Muslims be defeated today, you will no longer be worshipped." When the believers were ordered to charge, they did not charge alone, for the Prophet had been promised through the Quran, "When you sought aid from your Lord, so he answered you. I will assist you with 1,000 of the angels following one another." The presence of the angels was felt by all, but that presence was only visible or audible to a few, and in varying degrees. During the course of battle, Bilal killed Umayyah ibn Khalaf, his previous master, who would torture him by placing a large rock on his chest and letting him burn under the scorching sun in order to force him to renounce Islam. Mu'adh ibn Amr killed Abu Jahl. Hamza, Ali, and other Muslim heroes penetrated deeply into enemy lines, forgetting themselves, their small numbers, and their being surrounded by the enemies. Muslims hurled themselves into the encounter, chanting, "God is one, God is one." By midday, Quraysh, who had expected to have to make a show of force, panicked and fled in disarray, leaving about 50 of their leading men, including Abu Jahl himself. Leaving about 50 of their leading men, including Abu Jahl himself, dead on the field. When the dust began to settle and the unbelievers had fled the battlefield, the Muslims collected the dead of Quraysh and buried them on the spot. The Prophet and his companions spent that night on the battlefield burying their dead, collecting the booty, and keeping watch of the captives. The outcome of the battle was a humiliating defeat for the polytheists. They sustained heavy casualties. 70 were killed and a like number taken prisoners. Many of the principal men of Mecca and some of the Prophet's bitterest opponents were among the slain. 14 Muslims were killed, of who 6 were from the immigrants, Muhajirun, and 8 from the helpers, Al-Ansar. The question as to what to do with the captives troubled the Prophet, and he submitted the matter to the Muslims and sought their advice. Abu Bakr appealed to the Prophet's gentleness and stirred his companion. He pleaded, "O Prophet of God, you are dearer than my father and my mother. Your captives consist of men who are parents, sons, cousins, uncles, and brothers of your own people. The most removed of them is still a member of your clan and a blood relative. Be good to them and forgive them. God will forgive you and be good to you. Otherwise, allow them to be ransomed and take from them that which would increase the Muslims in power. Perhaps by such action, God will soften their hearts towards Islam." Umar, coming after Abu Bakr, sat in his place and pleaded, "O Prophet of God, these are the enemies of God. They have belied you, fought you, and banished you. Strike their necks. They are the leaders of idolatry and misguidance. By this course, God will consolidate Islam and bring low the idolaters." The Prophet then decided to ransom the captives, to which God revealed, "It does not behove a prophet to hold captives, not to tyrannize in the world. You seek the advantages of this world, whereas God wishes you to seek the advantages of the other. God is almighty, all-wise." So he let the captives go. Some of the lessons that we can draw from the Battle of Badr. After more than 14 years of struggling without permission to retaliate physically, God then revealed to the Prophet to take up arms against the enemy. This legislation of physical struggle contained many wisdoms. Of them we find a means of protecting the right of belief in and practice of Islam, and to facilitate the betterment of the call to Islam. A means of overcoming injustice and corruption on the earth. A means of distinguishing the believers from the hypocrites. A means of increasing the community's faith and subservience to God, as well as facilitating the path to martyrdom. When the revelation was revealed that there could be no question of anything but raids, and though information about caravans was seldom precise, there had come news of a rich Meccan caravan that was returning from Syria, laden with goods, under the command of Abu Sufyan. The Prophet set out with 300 men in earnest, but an informant from within had already sent word to Abu Sufyan, who in response called on his fellow Qurayshites to muster up as much help as they could. What followed was the epic Battle of Badr, and it brought with it many lessons and morals. And some important ones are: the Prophet sought the advice and counsel of his companions when forming his military strategy, thus showing us the importance of the Islamic concept of consultation. In fact, the Prophet cultured the companions to feel confident in expressing their views. It was upon the advice of one of the companions that the Muslims were able to gain the upper hand by blocking off the water supply to the enemy. The event of Badr shows us the power of divine decree in that neither the Prophet nor the Qurayshites had actually intended for war, but rather God had ordained the battle take place and through it make his religion victorious. God even made the number of Qurayshite fighters seem few in number to the Prophet and his disciples, and likewise made the Muslims seem few in number to the Qurayshites. The illusion only served the purpose of making each party more enthusiastic to fight. It was because of the Prophet and his disciples' detailed preparation and reliance upon God that God bestowed upon them the help of angels to increase them in morale and faith on the battlefield. The intimate form of guidance the Prophet received from God prevented him from erring in matters of religion. In the incident of the prisoners of war, God revealed to the Prophet by way of a Quranic verse the more correct choice he should have made, and so the Prophet corrected himself accordingly. The first verse of the Quran of Jihad was revealed in chapter Al-Hajj, verses 39 to 40. Permission to fight is given to those who are fought against because they have been wronged. Permission to fight is given to those who are fought against because they have been wronged. Truly, God has the power to come to their support. Those who were expelled from their homes without any right, merely for saying, "Our Lord is God." And a note here, जब जिहाद का नाम आया, लफ्ज़ जिहाद का exact मतलब जो है वो holy war नहीं है. And this is for people who translate it into, and especially in, West में जो है वो जिहाद को translate किया जाता है holy war. Jihad actually means a struggle. So that is what it is. And बहुत तरह के होते हैं जिहाद. It's not only just on the battlefield. But the लफ्ज़ी माना जो है, the literal meaning of jihad means a struggle. The Quranic chapter Al-Anfal, Spoils of War, was revealed after the incident of Badr in Ramadan of 2 Hijri. It constituted a unique divine commentary on this battle. When Ubaidah Amir ibn Jarrah took the life of his own father in the Battle of Badr, God revealed the following verse of the chapter Mujadala. You will not find people who have faith in God and the last day having love for anyone who opposes God and His messenger, though they be their fathers, their sons, their brothers, or their clan. God has inscribed faith upon such people's hearts and will reinforce them with a spirit from Him and admit them into gardens with rivers flowing under them, remaining in them timelessly forever. God is pleased with them and they are pleased with Him. Such people are the party of God. Truly, it is the party of God who are successful. In the month of Sha'ban, during the second year of the Islamic calendar, fasting, the month of Ramadan, was obliged through the following Quranic verse of chapter Al-Baqarah, and this is verse 184. You who have faith, fasting is prescribed for you, as it was prescribed for those before you, so that you will attain piety and God consciousness. Other significant occurrences in this second year of the Islamic calendar. After praying towards Jerusalem for around 16 months, revelation came down about a change in prayer direction, found in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 144. So turn your face in the direction of Al-Masjid Al-Haram at Mecca, and wheresoever you people are, turn your faces in prayer in that direction. The following injunctions were decreed through the prophetic tradition. It is a sunnah to stay at the place of victory for 3 days in order to ward off a counterattack, bury the martyrs, and apportion the spoils of war. And sunnah, बता दें हम हमारे सुनने वालों को, who might not know, sunnah means something that the Prophet did or said or approved of. And the ways of the Prophet are called sunnah, या उर्दू में सुन्नत कहते हैं. The martyr is buried at his place of death without the funeral prayer or ritual bathing. तो इससे ये भी पता चलता है जी कि शहीद जो हैं वो उनकी नमाज जनाजा भी नहीं होती और उनका गुस्ल भी नहीं होता. और जहाँ पर उनकी शहादत होती है, क्योंकि शहीद की मौत नहीं होती है, शहीद की शहादत होती है, उनको उसी जगह पर दफन किया जाता है. The call to prayer, adhan, had begun to be observed in the Muslim community. A form of obligatory charity known as Zakah al-Fitr, which was to be paid at the end of Ramadan, was obliged. It is said that the Muslim community celebrated their first ever Eid in Shawwal, Eid al-Fitr, this year. And this ends the chapter of the Battle of Badr. और इंशाल्लाह कंटिन्यू हम करेंगे नेक्स्ट फ्राइडे को एंड वी विल गो इनटू द थर्ड ईयर आफ्टर हिजरा. एंड अल्लाह ताला से इस वक्त मैं समझती हूँ कि अगर हम कोई दुआ मांगें तो अल्लाह ताला कबूल करता है. फ्राइडे एक बहुत ही सिग्निफिकेंट डे होता है जी. और एज अ सुन्ना ऑफ द प्रॉफिट आल्सो, लाइक आई जस्ट मेंशन्ड, द सुन्ना वाज समथिंग दैट द प्रॉफिट डिड. इट इज आल्सो अ सुन्ना ऑफ द प्रॉफिट टू रिसाइट सूरा अल-कहफ ऑन फ्राइडे, व्हिच विल प्रोवाइड फॉर यू लाइट ऑन द डे ऑफ जजमेंट. एंड हमारे दिल में तो बहुत बहुत सारी दुआएं हैं इस वक्त उमड़ती हैं, स्पेशली व्हेन आई रीड दिस स्टोरी. और शहादत की बात हुई तो आपको पता है कि शहादा इज़ नॉट जस्ट ग्रांटेड फॉर पीपल हु डाई इन द बैटल फील्ड. देयर इज़ अ लॉट ऑफ बहुत दर्जात होते हैं शहादत के. तो हमारे दिल में हमेशा ये उमंग उठती है, क्योंकि हमारी दुआ हमेशा ये होती है, अल्लाह ताला से मांगते हैं जी जन्नत अल फिरदौस आला. आई मीन इफ यू थिंक आई एम एम्बिशियस फॉर द वर्ल्ड, यू हैव नो आइडिया हाउ एम्बिशियस आई एम फॉर द आफ्टर वर्ल्ड. सो we ask for हमारे सब के लिए जो कि सुन रहे हैं, जिन जिन के दिल में ये ख्वाहिश है कि उनको शहीद की मौत मिले और शहादत का ऊंचा आला दर्जा मिले, अल्लाह ताला उन सबको नसीब फरमाइए. और लेकिन आसान ज़िंदगी या रब और आसान मौत दे. शहादत की मौत मांगनी जो है वो ये इसका मतलब नहीं होता है कि यू आस्किंग फॉर समथिंग डिफिकल्ट. ऑलवेज व्हेनेवर यू आस्क फॉर समथिंग, आई ऑलवेज फॉलो इट एंड से अल्लाह ताला इसमें आसानी दे दे या रब. And may we strive in the cause of Allah, but the struggle is with no pain, inshallah, ya Rab. आसान जिंदगी और आसान मौत मांगा करिए अपने लिए. खात्मा बिल खैर इंशाल्लाह या रब. और हम जनाब आपको छोड़े जाते हैं इस बहुत ही खूबसूरत एक नशीद के साथ. और ये नशीद, क्योंकि हम यूजुअली जो है वो उर्दू की नशीद आपके लिए ज़्यादा नहीं प्ले करते हैं, सो आई थॉट दिस टाइम आई एम गोइंग टू प्ले वन नशीद जुनैद जमशेद की. हमने थोड़ी सी आपको सुनाई थी. देयर इज़ अनदर वन एक्चुअली इन हिज वॉइस, बहुत ही खूबसूरत है ये. एंड कोशिश हम करेंगे, क्योंकि यहाँ पर मेरे ख्याल से यहाँ पर लगना बंद हो गई है, यहाँ इंटरनेट कुछ शायद गड़बड़ है. We'll try and see if we can play this one for you. If not, इंशाल्लाह फिर अगली बार प्ले कर देंगे आपके लिए. एंड इजाज़त दीजिए मुझे अपनी मेज़बान अरूज सईद को, और अपनी दुआओं में, ख़ास दुआओं में हमें ज़रूर याद रखिएगा. एंड एवरीवन एट रेडियो आज़ाद एंड द लिसनर्स एंड सपोर्टर्स ऑफ रेडियो आज़ाद एज वेल. Next up are Aisha and Beena with the Coffee Morning. Stay tuned and inshallah we'll see you on Monday. Monday के दिन आके हम कुछ बहुत ही ख़ास बातें आपसे करेंगे. मंडे का प्रोग्राम मिस मत कीजिएगा. और एक बात तो जो है वो इस वीकेंड को जो होने वाली है जी, कल 25 फरवरी है. 25 फरवरी होता है हमारी कंट्री, यस, Kuwait की. Well, that is for me my home. It is the Independence Day of Kuwait. And 26th February को जो है वो होता है Liberation Day of Kuwait, Liberation from Iraq. और इस वक्त कुवैत जी सजा होता है एक दुल्हन की तरह. तो उसके बारे में भी और कुछ और भी बहुत ही ख़ास बात आपसे करेंगे हम मंडे के दिन आके इंशाल्लाह. सुनना मत भूलिएगा फ्रॉम 8 to 10. और इस प्रोग्राम का रिपीट आप सुन सकते हैं रात 10 बजे. एंड we'll see you on Monday. खुदा हाफिज. मरहबन या खैराता अय्युहा
wasallam. Oh, you who were raised amongst us, coming with a word to be obeyed. You have brought to this city nobleness. Welcome, best caller to God's way.
Now you have multiple ways to stay connected with us on Radio Azad. You can listen to us on radioazad.us, iTunes, Azad Online, and shoutcast.com. You can listen to us on your iPhones via our free iPhone app, and on your Blackberries and Android phones via the TuneIn Radio and High Def Radio app. You can also join us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and watch us on YouTube. Now Radio Azad will be with you everywhere you go.
Radio Azad, Voice of the People, streaming worldwide on www.radioazad.us.
यार मेरी गाड़ी हर वक्त खराब हो जाती है, काम का मैकेनिक भी नहीं मिलता, जहाँ भी जाता हूँ इतने पैसे चार्ज करते हैं और कुछ अरसे में फिर खराब हो जाती है। That's because you're not taking your car to LubeTech Complete Auto Care। वहाँ ना सिर्फ ऑयल चेंज करते हैं बल्कि व्हीकल इंस्पेक्शन और बैटरी चेक्स भी बिल्कुल मुफ्त। और अगर for any reason उनकी